Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of week. It's Wednesday at 5 o'clock Central, 6 p.m. Eastern, and 3 p.m. Pacific. Am I right there, Jim?
And 11 p.m. British summertime.
It is. I'm not that smart to remember that, so I always skip that one. How's everybody doing? We got several people already in the chat. Bad Karma, Kent, Guillermo. I always struggle with that. I'm sorry, dude.
Just call
Tony.
Memo.
All right, Travis. Harrison. I thought there was one other one in here. Mike, what's going on? Kim and Bill and Sam. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. So this show, Cameron Flask, happens every single week, same time. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the beautiful and lovely Jem Schofield's channel, the C47, which is what you're watching right now. Yeah, how you doing, boss?
I'm doing well. I'm just realizing that I put Ken instead of Ben in my description because somebody did the heads up. So I'm giving somebody crap for calling me Jem Gem instead of Jem, and we know who that is. Bad Karma. And then here I am in the show description putting Ken instead of Ben. So apparently Ken is on a motorcycle trip right now with his friends.
Yes.
So I just made a quick update to that, but of course, everything that I did for social, I just copy and pasted. So I think on LinkedIn and everything, it says Ken. We just like to confuse people a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm doing well. How are you today?
Good. As multiple people probably have noticed, there's just the two of us this week. Ben is way cooler than Gemini and like rides motorcycles and stuff. So he's doing that this week. So
for sure.
I'm well. Tired. Got a lot of content published yesterday and was up past my bedtime.
Huge day for you. So
a lot of stuff.
Your next camera guide dropped, correct?
Yes. Shot, edited, published, a review, a guide. I didn't shoot the whole guide in a day. That would have been insane. And just all the little things that go along with that, all the little thumbnails. And that's the death by attrition, all that little stuff. Yeah. The actual video production isn't bad, but I mean, man, there's just so much involved, writing everything.
So many parts.
Yeah, but it's over. And we're all hanging out here. And I'm ready. I'm ready for a drink. I don't know about yourself.
Oh, I'm ready. And Ryan, thanks for stopping by to say hello. Thanks for catching the replay later on. And just some hellos to 360 Grad, David, Andres, Clay, Dan, Ricardo, maybe new, Sam, Bill, Mike, what's happening? Kim, and we've got some, other troublemakers here, namely by the name of
oh my goodness, Shiz shows up early for a change. Wow.
And Dan's here, rum and coke tonight. All right, time for drinking.
Yes, sir.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to start with you. What do you got there?
Oh, I'm just going for old standby today. It's been we'll put a word in front of it show, and I'm just going to go with the old standby, the Glenlivet 12.
Delicious.
And I like it more than the Glenfiddich 12 for sure. So I'm going to pour myself a wee dram, or maybe a little bit more than a wee dram. And that's what I'm having today. And how about you?
I don't have an empty bottle, but it's not full.
Okay. Oh, right there it is. Very exciting.
Okay, here we go. Okay, this is new for me.
Karma whiskey?
Wood cork. Wood cork, so we're not doing anything super cheap.
Wow.
Can you guess? Anybody?
Elijah Craig.
There you go. Elijah Craig, small batch.
Have a little bourbon. Ooh, there it is, just like The Godfather.
I'm going to pour it into a Kettle One glass because that makes sense.
I'm not talking. I'm not. There's nobody pregnant here. The dog is not pregnant.
Whoa. What am I missing in the comments here?
That's the whole dog thing.
The dog.
Oh, slightly nasty Kirkland London Dry Gin with tonic. David, I appreciate that. And because it's a Kirkland, you're being a little cost conscious. Do we know what Kirkland is? Kirkland is actually Costco brand, correct?
Yep.
And there it is. So well done. And hey, Shiz.
I saw a rum and coke in there somewhere.
Yes, that's correct. That's I think Dan is having a rum and coke. Let us know what you're drinking.
Bingo.
There we go. Okay, so here we are.
Sir.
Episode 30, by the way. Yeah.
Episode 30. Absolutely. Cheers, everybody.
We miss you, Ben, Ken,
Mm.
Mm. Okay.
Mm.
Yummy, yummy, yummy.
So let's jump in. There we go. There it is.
Yeah, you don't
Okay.
have to be a drinker of bad karma.
Oh no.
Pepsi's fine.
Coffee,
Coffee's fine.
water.
It doesn't matter. Sour beer from Blue Jacket in DC. Very nice.
So, Jem Schofield, WWDC
Mm-hmm.
Cheese Grater Fest 2019, and then we got CineGear.
Yes.
Where do we even want to start with all of this?
Well, I mean, we could do chronological order, and we could start chatting a little bit about CineGear, I think.
Sure.
Show.
Why don't we start with okay. We'll do CineGear.
Go ahead.
And then we'll end with monitors and CineGear. That way we can kind of transition over to Apple land.
For sure.
With what they got going on. So a lot has happened recently, as lots of you guys probably already know. We had CineGear 2019, WWDC 2019. You probably already know a lot of what's going on there. Do we want to start with Panasonic, since they kind of announced something before CineGear?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably, of everything that we're going to talk about, it's the one product that we don't know every single thing about the product, but we know that it is definitely geared towards cinema. It's geared towards production, and we know what it is. It's the S1H.
Right.
So I'm going to let you take the lead on this because,
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. It's a $4,000 camera, full frame. It's essentially a larger, more powerful Panasonic S1. So for those who don't know, the Panasonic S1 has been out for a little while. It's finally getting its much needed firmware update to kind of unlock Vlog, all that kind of thing. So with the S1H, they kind of have taken that full frame stills camera and given us more of a cinema body with some really, really interesting design choices. And I'm thinking about doing a video entitled, why the Panasonic is important, and I'm not going to buy one. In that, I don't think it's necessarily going to be perfect for a lot of people, but I think it's a really important camera. So Panasonic's not making just taking this copy and paste with their previous bodies. They completely redesigned this body for this camera. And it reminds me a lot of the Canon XC10, XC15 kind of form factor, which I really dig. When that camera came out, I was hoping somebody would make something like that, but with a mirrorless system, with a larger sensor.
Yeah. I was really hoping that what they would do is take that. Oh my God, that autofocus is fast. It's amazing. I should be pressing record. What I really wish they would have done with that XC10, XC15 form factor was make it essentially the camera that would replace the C100 line, and make it an interchangeable lens system camera with a super 35mm sensor, more compact with that XA400 for the audio unit, and just allow you to go EF mount on that sucker. Because it's really, when you think about a handheld camera, it's almost ideal. If they could get ND into that, even if they just made the body slightly larger and you had your XLR inputs, to me, that is about as, I don't say perfect, but it's pretty darn close when it comes to that little small form factor. And so far they haven't done anything with that. And maybe as they start to move into 8K and start to do some other things as a company, they might revisit some, more unusual form factors for 4K cameras. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
And what excites me most about this camera is that we're getting close to what I've been dreaming of since the 5D came out, which has been this crossover between mirrorless stills cameras, or DSLR stills cameras, and the cinema world. And they've been coming closer and closer together, right? We're obviously mirrorless with our cinema cameras, but they're all larger form factor.
Sure.
And I've always said, like, they're going to come together. It just makes sense, So to have something that's what looks kind of that smaller form factor, but it's a dedicated, cinema camera. Like, they're really going after that. This is not an SH1 with some extra video features. It's a cinema camera.
Yep.
The flip out screen, they just really went for it with this camera, and it's not just a copy and paste of their stills stuff. So I'm wondering if we'll see something similar from Sony. I don't think we're going to see an A7 III body from Sony, or even necessarily an A9 body from Sony when it comes to the A7S III. I think they're going to do kind of a similar thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting really good, and it's really expensive. I'm not going to probably buy one. But I think, you know, it's a huge step in the right direction. And a couple years from now, it's going to be a phenomenal camera to pick up. People are asking about other features we'll see. Right now, we know, I probably should go over that. We have a 6K camera, not just a 6K sensor, but you can capture 3.2 6K, which isn't really useful unless you're doing anamorphic.
Right.
But you can do a 5.9K in 16:9 up to 30 frames per second. 4K 60, although I think that's going to be a crop. Other specs, not too much else. There's no stabilization.
Right.
So it's similar to the GH5S in that regard. You know, otherwise it's pretty similar, if not the same sensor. That hasn't been confirmed yet, though. And the vents, people are mentioning, yeah, the body's bigger, it's wider and taller than the S1, which that thing is going to be massive, because the S1 is you laugh when you pick it up, coming from
Yep.
Sony and Canon even. The vents, there's vents, and it does have a flip out screen, so they're clearly listening, because people have been hounding that forever.
Yep.
And it has vents. It has these little slots that people noticed from the photos. And my guess, this is just speculation. I don't have any insider information. I don't have anybody at any of these companies that I talk to. My guess is we're going to get RAW on this camera in the future.
Internally?
Internally.
Interesting.
Like, actually, I have one right here because I'm thinking about selling it, because I'm not really that wild about it. But the Nikon Z6 is going to get RAW external. And this is barely bigger than an A7 III.
Right.
So I have a hard time believing the vents in the fan and all that stuff is just because of 6K. I don't feel like that's a big enough jump, because all these cameras have 6K sensors for the most part, but we're downscaling to 4K.
Right.
So my guess is that's got to be RAW.
You don't think
internal.
this could be? Oh, that's right. Yeah, it can't be. It can't be the EVA 1, even though that's 5.9, because that's a Super 35 sensor. So I'm just thinking about that sensor again.
Oh, you're talking about like you mean
Yeah.
you know, cannibalization of all that stuff?
Well, they're also saying that this S1H will probably, whatever they're doing with this camera, is borrowing a lot of stuff from the GH5, GH5S, but it's going to be upstream as well, that we could see what's happening in this camera start to go up into what the next iteration of the EVA 1 might be.
Right, right.
And
And
hopefully
that's,
those two parts are communicating with each other.
yeah. No, it's really interesting. I hadn't thought of all the tie-ins. Like, obviously there's the EVA 1, they have to protect that. This camera is missing a bunch of stuff. It doesn't have electronic ND or any of that stuff. It doesn't have dual native ISO, which I'm not necessarily a fan of for various reasons, but that's a whole nother topic. So at any rate, very interesting camera. Something's going on with the vents. They can't talk about the vents. I feel like if they can talk about 6K, but they can't talk about the vents, like if you watch these interviews with Panasonic people, when someone's like, so what's up with the vents? They're like, what vents? Seriously, they're
The
like,
ones we're
I
looking
can't
at.
talk about it. I can't talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So there's something coming out with that. And to your point, you would think, oh, well, if it comes out with raw full frame, maybe it's not a full readout of raw, although I don't know how that's possible. But at any rate, how could they come out with that without the EVA 1? Maybe they're going to update that. And I saw an interview where they talked about the LT and the price drop, which we can get to later.
Sure.
That camera, which was $18,000, is now under 10.
Yeah.
And in interviews, they're talking about, people are like, well, are you dropping the price because you're about to release something new? And they've confirmed, no, this camera is here to stay, but we have some big updates coming that are going to be free for the camera. So maybe Panasonic's about to just go firmware crazy. I don't know.
I hope they do.
Something's up with that fan and the vent and that whole thing. Something's coming out later down the road for that camera.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons we're seeing this merge happen is, oddly enough, because of 8K. because we're starting to see a lot of cameras come to market now, which are going to have 8K as an option, which means that this coveted 4K resolution space doesn't have to be as coveted anymore.
Mm,
And we can start to see some cameras come to market in a more affordable price point that are 4K, maybe with a 6K sensor, but that are 4K. They're, because of that reason. I think it's also going to be really interesting to see what that A7, we call it obviously the A7S Mark III, but what's going to happen with that particular camera, because that could be the camera that leapfrogs that 6K, top resolution. And I'm not talking
right.
about the sharp camera, of course. And what happens if they come out with that camera and it's an 8K camera? The big thing there is going to be data rate, and that they're going to have a robust enough internal codec to support it. They better not come out with that and say your 4K is 100 megabits per second and your 8K is 200 megabits per second.
Yeah.
It's just not realistic to giving us enough information in what we have. But I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited that they're doing that. I do want to just before I forget here, where am I getting my news? There wasn't a huge number of announcements at CineGear. Generally, I'll go to News Shooter because I think that they're one of the most thorough in terms of actual, news information about new equipment. They tend to get, on-site interviews. Cinema 5D has some good content as well. Some of it's crossover, some of it is different between the two sites. And I'm generally not going to sites that are aggregating content. So I'm not usually going to No Film School, though they'll show up in the feed sometimes and I'll go and read an article about something. But they tend to be a big aggregator now. This stuff at Red Shark, some of that is original content. Some of it seems to be repurposed. It's hard to say. But it does seem like, in general, Cinema 5D and News Shooter, for the most part, tend to create their own content. Would you buy a used C200? And where would you trust getting one? I mean, I would. I think you've got to be careful with something like that. It is a big purchase. And if you're saving, a decent amount of coin and you're picking one up for $5,000, you want to find out, who the owner was, if they've sold things before. Obviously, if you're going to buy it from somewhere like B&H, you're not going to get as good of a deal as if you buy it from, an owner operator. But just got to do your research.
I might be wrong on stabilization, but I'm just looking into that because I know someone was like, "What?"
Yeah, I didn't
I
know
don't
if
think
they
it's.
had
I don't think
another.
it's been fully confirmed. Maybe.
Okay.
But I'm not. I can't back that up fully.
And
So
when are we
anyway,
seeing that camera? They're thinking, is that fourth quarter of this year?
yeah, they're saying fall, so
Yeah.
potentially like late fall.
Okay.
So yeah, there's the S. I could see Sony do 8K.
On the
Resolution bumps and raw. That's the big tickets. Although for Sony, oh please, I don't care what they do as long as it's not 10-bit or 8-bit rather.
right.
So over that 8-bit 420. So over it. I haven't used this camera. I mean, you can tell just looking at this stream. I bet. Yeah, Jem's got the resolution's rough, and I'm all sweaty here, but I've been shooting with my GH5S again a lot more, which is the camera I use most of the time.
Mm.
And it's just amazing the difference. It's just a mushy, nasty, bandy mess with Sony, which
Yeah.
is sad. But yeah,
And it should be noted that also the combinations of gammas, dynamic range, and gamuts with Sony cameras in mirrorless, which you and I have had many conversations about,
mm,
Caleb, what you're getting out of an A7 series camera in terms of wide color gamuts is not the same as what you're getting out of an FS7 or one of their higher end cinema cameras. So it may in fact have the same gamuts in the menu, but they're not necessarily, if you look in the manuals, the full kit and caboodle in
right
terms of
on.
what you're getting. And so, and that 8-bit isn't helping.
Yeah.
And let's keep tweaking your color science, because in all honesty, when we start looking at the different camera companies out there, Arri, of course, forget about it. Canon's doing a pretty admirable job. Fuji's making some cameras that have really nice color science. And definitely Panasonic's. I mean, out of the box. I would say that when we get into the mirrorless market, that Sony is still probably the weakest all around when
I
it
would agree
comes
with that.
to
Yeah.
out of the box. You can get somewhere that you want to get to, but you have to work harder, much harder to get a pretty image with Sony's cameras than you do with most of the other manufacturers.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll address this real quick. This question: what brand of MPF batteries do you recommend other than DSTE? I do still have a lot of DSTE batteries. Yeah, I feel like the Chinese batteries are getting better. Wasabi has gotten a lot better from the dark ages. Remember those things? Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh
I have
man.
some.
I mean, you can
So,
buy Sony, but it's going to be 6 times the cost, probably.
Anton
Watson's not bad.
Watson, yeah, Anton Bauer are more reasonable than the Sonys,
Nice.
because they
There
have
you
to
go.
be competitive. But if you want to go middle of the road, then it's AB batteries, Anton Bauer, and then I would say Watson and what we call it? You just said
Wasabi.
Wasabi. I have a bunch of theirs. Sometimes it's a little bit of a hit or miss. You'll get a bad batch with a bad pin here or there, but the cost is so low that sometimes it's worth taking a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, guys, let us know what you think of the S1, and we're gonna jump. I think now would be a good time to jump into CineGear,
Yes.
which this
So,
camera was shown at.
yep. I
You got
think.
anything?
I mean, I think we should acknowledge. I think we should acknowledge the new Hive 575
Right,
because
that's the big boy, right?
it's a big it's a big light in what they're doing, because historically, as a lighting company, Hive has been known for plasma lights. So they were kind of an alternative to HMIs. They used a different technology. The cost of the actual bulbs was far less than HMIs. The cost of the unit overall wasn't a lot less than an HMI, but there was that advantage. Then they started to move into their 5-color LED solutions with their Hive, lights, where they had the 100, which is the Wasp, which is the first one that came to market, and then they came out with the 50, which is the B, the Hornet, which is the 200. Then we started to see with the Hornet a little bit more power draw, a little more output in that form factor. But then at NAB, and now really shown at CineGear, they have the 575-C. Now, let's just begin by saying that this is a $5,000 light, but it is a light that is putting equivalent light output to a 575 watt HMI, which is now taking their LED technology, and I think as a company saying we're going to move away from plasma, probably as a company, and we're going to stick to this this route. Now, this is a 550 watt power draw LED. So we're talking about a beast of a light overall. And I think that probably the most exciting thing about this is that we're talking about a 550 watt power draw LED. And we're starting to see that we're now pushing beyond that 300 watt power draw in relatively compact units. That means that, it's only a year or two away, I would say, Caleb, for us seeing lights that are going to be, relatively cost effective, that are going to have 1K power draw. You're going to, plug that into a 10 amp circuit, and you're just going to have ridiculous amounts of output. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that they don't exist. I mean, Mole Richardson has ridiculous, huge LEDs, that they are selling that have huge power draw. But I'm talking about small to no crew production, and I think that this is definitely, a step in that direction. And of course, there are a lot of Chinese companies who are making high power draw, high output in terms of LED as well. What's the highest power draw that you've actually had in the shop? Do you know?
I had a prototype that never came to market,
Hmm.
um, and it was 4 something.
Hmm.
And like I know IntelliTech which we've talked about in the past.
Yep.
I think they have 485 lights you can buy right now.
Wow. Okay, so pretty close. Yep.
Yeah, so they're getting there. And that Yuri LED chip place I shared with,
Yeah.
we talked about that one time. I'm trying to look it up because it's redonkulous, but it's they have what was it, 5 or 750 watts or something for one chip.
Interesting.
It's ridiculous. And like, I feel like watt consumption wise, things are getting a lot more efficient. So it used to be where you would ask how many watts a light sucks up when it comes to LED. And if you were told it was 200, you're like, wow, that's really bright. But 200 watts today versus 3 years ago is pretty significant, the difference.
It is, and they're driving those. They're driving the LEDs harder, but I think they're also figuring out the heat management a little bit better.
Right.
I mean, you can take one light as just an example, which is the 120D and the 120D2. They're both drawing the same amount, but you're getting about 20% more output out of the 120D2. So
Yeah.
it is possible to do that. I have not, Harrison, heard of any battery options for the 575. I imagine with that much draw, we're going to be looking at a dual battery solution at minimum, if there is a solution for
Mm,
that. It might be a suitcase based solution. And it is probably, well, not necessarily, but it could be going up from a 14.4 to like a 26-volt solution, just in terms of dealing with the amperage that the light is,
mm,
pulling. And so we'll have to see. I know that Westcott, when they moved to RGBW, had to change their battery system, and it's universal for all of them unless you're in bicolor. Then you can go down to the, in certain panel sizes, the 14.4 batteries as well. So it all depends on the way they design that fixture. Datalight's LED Raptor 7 is 880 watts, Juan says.
that's a lot
Mother
of
of pearl.
watts.
Yeah, it'd be nice if data lights were affordable in this country.
Oh, data
Um,
lights.
yeah. Okay. Up now, Shiznuts is in. He's bringing up some glass. We've got the VZ anamorphic brand emerged out of nowhere. Uh,
Yeah, that's
um,
exciting.
yeah,
Micro
like
Four Thirds
yep,
anamorphics, right?
yep, half the price of the Atlas.
Like
So they
stupid
are,
cheap. Like, what was it, 3 grand a pop or less?
they're not very expensive.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So some really cool stuff happening there.
Square, which but still anamorphic.
hmm What else we've got? Just kind of,
Noir is totally on point with what I saw. So many Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, so many boutique cine lenses.
yep.
Yeah, lots. It's all about vintage now and rehousing and character. I
Yep.
heard that word so many times in interviews. All the manufacturers and just rehousing companies are having a heyday. I really enjoyed Old Fast Glass. Did you see that video from
Nope.
Cinema 5D?
Nope.
So Old Fast Glass, they rehouse lenses and rent them, and really, really cool stuff there to check out. Finding old lenses, how to take care of them, how they deal with rehousing and all that. So they must be making a killing these days.
Yeah, I think what's exciting too is that, we've talked about this in the past. When you're looking at vintage glass, unless you're using one lens for production, one of the things that you have to do is you have to consider a family, like you're working with more than one focal length. And that is always the trick. And it's nice now that we're seeing these companies doing these things. I'm just realized I don't like the color temperature of that light, but it's just been bugging me. But that's just my OCD kicking in. So basically, when you're looking at a Nikon or a Nikon lens, depending on how you pronounce it, and you find that beautiful old Nikon lens from the 60s that has that really nice look and feel, and it has a certain, as you said, character to it. The problem is that unless you find additional lenses at different focal lengths that are in, basically that time period, then as you're swapping your prime lenses, then you're going to be seeing shifts in terms of the characteristics of those lenses. So what's happening now is we're starting to see manufacturers come out with new sets of lenses where they're trying to make those lenses have their own character, not be clinical, not be perfect in terms of what they are. And then hopefully for some or all of those companies, people are going to, latch onto whatever that thing is about the character of those lenses, but they'll be able to buy a set of them so that they all work together in terms of look and feel. So I think that's exciting that they're doing that. Same
Yeah.
coatings, everything else that is there, so that they are coming up with something that's consistent in terms of look and feel.
Yeah.
Travis has a question. Where did you get your shotgun mic pop filter?
I was actually just researching it. I just posted it in the chat. I
Okay,
think it
great.
goes through. It's
Okay,
$20. I think it's cheaper than that. Maybe
okay.
not.
Well, it'll
Anyway,
come up in
it's a
the, yeah,
modded version of what I just posted.
great. Okay, cool.
So yeah, lenses, lots and lots and lots and lots. People are
Yep.
talking about various lenses, vintage stuff. Yeah, it's really interesting. If Canon's coming out with something, that's when I was like, wow, okay, this is for real. Them and Takina at the same time around NAB, is that right, Jem?
Yeah, and then of course Arri did the same thing too.
Right,
That's
right, right.
three companies, and they're of course latching onto the full frame. So your large format is the name of the game. Nobody in the big boy field is really looking at seriously coming out with new lenses right now, unless they're at least large format full frame lenses.
Right. Do you
Because
think
yeah,
Zeiss will ever do the same? Because they're kind of the ones with the pristine clinical surgery lenses.
well, I would argue that their Supreme Primes are kind of the reason that they did that.
Right. Okay.
I think that they do have a certain character to them, and I do like the way those lenses look. And I think they've done it. I mean, I think that that's what those lenses are. I think that
Yeah.
they've said we have all of our other lenses, and they have, if you go between Bodice and you go between Milvis and you go between Otis, there may be quality differences with those lenses, but they all match each other in terms of the family. I don't think that that's necessarily true with their Supreme Primes. I'm saying
Mm.
that correctly, right? Yeah, it's a Supreme, right? Zeiss Supremes,
Summicron or something weird.
Summicron. Yeah,
You talking
maybe
about
it's not.
Canon?
Hold on. Hold
Canon
on.
or Zeiss?
I'm talking about Zeiss. Their
Okay,
Supreme Primes,
okay. I can't
isn't that?
remember
They're
what
Supreme.
is Canon's weird
Sumier or
flower
something. Yeah, flowery. Yep.
Sumier.
Yeah, so you have the Supreme Primes, and then I forgot what Aries are called, but their new primes are also large format. So I think that Zeiss is in that game already. I think that they're doing it, and I think that that's the whole idea behind it. And that's kind of Snehal Patal's. That's his whole game when he came on to. He came from Arri to Zeiss, and he really he oversaw the whole thing in terms of that development. I don't know if he's technically a product manager, but he had so much to do with that whole project. I think this is a valid question. I'll just answer it because it's up here. It's a 360 grad says in my C200 rig setup, I supported my 70 to 200 lens with a lens support. How important is that actually to support those big lenses? And I'm going to talk about that very well. It's very important, but it depends what large lens it is. In actual fact, with an EF mount, putting the 70 to 200 f4 on there, I really don't need a lens support for that. That's a very lightweight, long lens. But as soon as you get to the 2.8 and you're talking about a heftier lens and you're on a lens mount that's not what we call positive locking, like on an Arri camera or other cameras that use PL or positive locking mount, then you really need to consider it very, very seriously. If you look at the E mount, not the one that's on the FS7 II, which is positive locking and is sort of a variation of it. But if you look at their standard E mount, that is not an incredibly strong lens mount. And so if you put a heavy lens on there, what can happen is that lens, which is like this, could, if you don't use a lens support, can pull that lens mount just ever so slightly out of collimation. And what will happen is you will find that you can't get tack sharp focus. And it doesn't matter how much back focus adjustment you do to get that lens to be in focus, because you're no longer true to the actual lens mount and it's bent it down a little bit, you will be out of collimation and you're going to basically have to send it in for service. So when we have companies now like Small Rig where you can buy a lens support to go on 15 mil rods, and it's going to cost you $15 to $20, it's a no-brainer. If you've got a big prime or zoom lens, then get a lens support up underneath it, and it will make a difference. And you'll see it too. It's pretty amazing. As soon as you put that lens support in, all of a sudden you look at your lens and it goes like that, and it's actually straight. So, don't mess with that lens mount. Take care of your camera. Haunting. Definitely.
Haunting. When you put those,
I know.
with your Fuji, whatchamacallits, MK lenses on there.
Oh, yeah. Those ones. And those are pretty light. I mean, considering, but still, that's not a big lens mount.
Speaking of lenses, Ingenue with their Optimo primes. I'm trying to look up the price because it was laughable.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
23 to 31K per lens, boys and girls.
Those must be beautiful. And we've got teleconverters coming out from Panasonic for the Lumix X, 1.4 and 2x ones.
On the other end of the spectrum, we've got SLR Magics, micro primes.
Yeah, like the 25, right?
Yeah, the 25 is the newest one. They've had a couple out, and they're now coming out for the Fuji mount, which is X mount, which is awesome.
That's a T 1.5, which is
some of them are faster. There's a 1.3 in there, 1.5. So I've seen pretty good results. People are pretty happy with them. They're SLR Magics. So they're a little bit of that funky, like, this reminds me of CCTV cameras. Or lenses,
Why did somebody ask? Was that a duck? What's David talking about? Any idea?
I do not know. Maybe when you pulled the cork out. Wah.
Oh yeah.
Does it sound like a duck?
Oh,
someone just tuned in.
They're like, what the hell is going on here?
Right. Any lots of good stuff here in the chat. Tamron, others on the still side, Tamron's 17 to 35, is it? I'm really excited for that. It might be more than 35, but really stoked. It's essentially the companion to that famous 28 to 75, which is what's filming right now.
Yep.
Cool. Well, do we want to move on from lenses? We talked about lenses. We talked about the S1.
Yeah, I mean,
Barricam real quick. Yeah. Get that taken care of.
LT?
Yeah.
Price drop. Unusual for Panasonic to make such a big price drop.
Yeah.
Not unusual for a company like Canon. Canon sort of starts off
all day, every day.
Cinema EOS series, or since the C300, it's like, let's start this thing off at 17 grand, and one day it's going to be 9,995.
Right.
But this is a big jump for the boys over at Panasonic, the boys and girls, wouldn't you say?
I'm not that familiar with their higher end stuff, but I was shocked to see. I mean, $6,500. Here's an article for those interested with a great video interview. And essentially, it sounds like that in between 10 and 20 grand market is kind of disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
There's 20 to 50 and beyond, and then there's kind of the under 10. So they wanted to get into that under 10. They probably saw the C200 just eating their lunch. Is my guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, again, this whole Canon thing, it's like, it's time and time again. It's, F you, Canon. Why didn't you give me this, and this? And then they sell a bucket load of the cameras.
Yeah.
And it shows you, which I think is worth noting, that while specs mean something, and they really do, and very much so when we're talking about things like 10-bit 422, but their 8-bit secret sauce is unlike anybody else's. And I'm not saying we want it. I want 10-bit in that camera system. But that little sucker over there, guess what? Color science is great. It's got built-in ND. It's got log. It's got good audio. It's got touch focus. It has a lot of other ingredients that make it a very good choice for a camera system for a lot of people who are doing day in, day out production. You pull it out of the bag. I'm much less excited about the Cinema Raw Lite, just because I really just wish they would commit to, a ProRes format inside of the camera system.
Yeah.
But I think they are selling a lot of those cameras. And you know what they're also selling a lot of now is the C300 Mark II with the touchscreen and the MA400 audio unit, because people don't like the clamshell and they want to move up to that touchscreen. And those are back ordered. We only found one for a client recently. Sammy's had one, and everybody else was like 3 weeks out across the country, including Green
Wow.
Acres. Yeah. So I think they're selling them. So crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's interesting to see this LT getting closer in price to the EVA 1, but the EVA 1 is dropping in price.
Yeah.
And I think what's really exciting to me is that in the very near future, we're going to be floating in that $5,000 US price range. And we're going to have so many 4K camera systems that are 10-bit, 422, built-in ND, XLR inputs, log, wide color gamut. It's just getting better and better for us in terms of what the options are. And the next iteration of an FS5 and the next iteration of the EVA 1 and the next iteration of a C200, they're all just going to keep getting better. And they're going to float in that $5,000 to $7,500 price range. And it's going to be great for us.
Yeah, I can imagine. When the C200 is back to or down to like $3,000
Oh yeah,
or something, just
yeah.
buy buckets of them.
Yeah.
Use them
I
for all
mean,
kinds of stuff.
it'll be down to $5,000 probably in a year.
I feel like just now we're starting to reach that like there's a time when old cameras weren't like the newer mirrorless small stuff was better than old stuff.
Yeah.
But we're just now starting to be like, oh wow, a C100 is nothing. Or an FS700 with a raw upgrade, or we're starting to dip our toes into that, phenomenal old camera stuff.
Yep.
But it's just gonna get ridiculous.
Especially
so
because
good.
so many of them are 4K. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously not the C100, but I mean,
right. You're not stuck with HD.
Yeah. Will the EVA 1 feature an L mount? Juan wants to know. I mean, very possibly but the real question will be how much are they committed to this, to this consortium or whatever it is? Because the reality, Juan, is there's a lot more EF mount lenses out there than anything else. I mean, Canon's now going to obviously make the jump to RF, in my opinion, for cinema. But they already have the adapters. In fact, their adapters give you functionality that you don't get with the RF lenses in terms of, ND and things like that. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Canon does on the pro end with RF.
Yes.
They're gonna make a new adapter.
Yep.
They're not gonna use their plastic adapters.
Hopefully it's positive blocking. So we should talk about monitors, I think, and then we have to get in because we're almost quarter to the hour.
All right, let's do it. Monitors. Let's start with small HD and Adamus.
Okay, so small HD,
because this is out of my
wheelhouse. So small HD is pretty simple. They have their 13 and they have their 17-inch monitors. And what they've essentially done is they've put their, but the other creative solutions company in that family that makes the wireless solutions, Teradex technology, into those now, along with their smaller 5 and 7-inch monitors in the market. So we essentially have a 1303 HDR bolt, and we have a 1703 P3X bolt. These are called sidekicks, and they have Teradex technology built into them. I think it's exciting because you basically can, receive signals from their 500, 1000, and 3000 series, and you're getting about 500, line of sight feet in there. And yes, you're paying more for them, but pardon me, geez, if you're doing wireless all the time, then this could be a good option for you in terms of production. There's still 1080 displays, so you have to consider that in terms of your decision. They are at least a 17-inch because it's the 17 is a P3X, so it's 100% of DCI P3 in terms of color gamut. and then the 1303 is a 1500 nit. So you've got a bright little sucker in that monitor. So I think
Wow.
that's exciting. And 1000 nit for the 17-inch one. And then
Right
when we
on.
get to the neons, the neon is kind of a really interesting, very typical Atomos announcement in the sense that you have a series of new monitors. This is their first foray into 4K monitors, so they're going higher than 1080, and that's in their higher end monitors in the line. So they have it's a 17, a 24, 31, and a 55-inch. So
Correct.
the 17 is actually a 1080 display, so that should be noted right off the bat. The
The
24,
which size? What size?
the smaller, the 17-inch,
Okay.
which
HD.
is a little bit disappointing because I would love to see a 17 DCI 4K from them. So you basically are jumping to the 24-inch neon for DCI 4K, a 4096 by 2160. You also get a jump in pixels per inch. So you're going up to 193 pixels per inch instead of 142. Now, technically, that would make, you need more pixels per inch. But the interesting thing is, as you start to go to their larger displays, your pixels per inch actually go down. So you go down to 148 from 193 when you go to the 31-inch, and to 84 pixels per inch on the 55-inch. So you're not getting nearly as many pixels per inch. The backlights on those displays also goes a big jump in number from the 17 to the other sizes. The 17 has 128 zones of backlights, because this is essentially an LED technology. What they're trying to do is they're trying to give you the same types of contrast ratio and dynamic range that you'd be getting out of OLEDs, but giving you the brightness that you would get out of basically LCD, right? LED technology.
Right.
So, so what you're doing is you're using these different zones, and they each have their own individual capabilities in terms of luminance values. So you're only getting 128 in the 17-inch monitor, but when you jump to the 24, you're getting 512. And then it stays 512 for the 31 and the 55. So in my mind, and I have to see what the monitor is like, the sweet spot is the 24, because the 24 is DCI 4K. It is 193 pixels per inch, and it's 512 zone backlights. You're probably getting the best all around in terms of feature set when you go into that display. There's apparently going to be an 8K upgrade option, and the most interesting thing is the recording module is essentially the closest that we've ever seen to a Ninja Star, but for 4K recording. So it's
And
this
the
separate thing.
control, you talked about the control module.
Well, so that's really weird. I mean,
There's
there's
some stuff going on. They just announced like a day ago this 8K update, and they're
yes,
showing off this control module, and
yes,
it's like this. It's like a Ninja 5 without a display
yes,
stapled onto the back of their neon.
right. Which is,
So,
but it does 4K, of course, and so the whole thing. There's a lot of questions, and
well,
the
the
thing that's
oh, I
yeah.
see.
No, go ahead.
I thought it was the 8K master control unit will be required to record 8K. So there's some stuff there that we're just gonna have to wait and see what's up.
Yeah, and the other thing that's really interesting about the whole thing is that in order to really operate this monitor, you have to use an app.
Yeah.
There's no buttons on the thing.
Right.
And that's going to be like, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, one of the things
Yeah,
that I
especially
love, yeah,
I was
go ahead.
just gonna say, like, and Jeremy was talking about this. We want to be on every film set, but I can't see everyone on a film set whipping out their phone to connect to stuff.
I mean, it's going to have to be an instant on ad hoc Wi-Fi network for that to really be taking off, right? And I'm
Oh yeah,
excited for it. If they can do it and it's like that, then no problem. Or I guess if you're paying this much money for something, you're going to have an iPad Pro or something similar to that, and it's going to be a
right.
dedicated device. specifically for controlling that monitor. You're almost going to have to match a device to the monitor, which to me is the big downside to app-based control.
Yeah,
Is, you
I
know,
hear you.
I mean, if they do an Android version of the app right out of the gate, then I think we're okay, because you can buy a relatively inexpensive tablet that's Android and just say the whole purpose of this, just like people do for a Movi, is like the whole purpose of this device is to control this piece of hardware.
I mean,
And if that's the
at
case,
those prices though, why not just put like a Shinobi panel on the back, and you could just tap tap tap
or give
or
you a
something?
controller. I mean, they
Or
know
yeah,
how to do touchscreen. I mean, they
yeah,
could, maybe that's what they'll do. I mean, I'd love it
yeah.
if they just said, okay, for $4.99, we give you a control unit, this and that, and blah blah blah, or $3.99.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This feels
I
like
don't
a more expensive, impressive, but more expensive, like, what's their other 19-inch? The Sumo.
know.
Just
Sumo,
like,
yes.
it's cool, but
I mean, I'm excited about it, but
the
it's
panel's
again,
amazing.
yeah, I think it's going to be a great panel. There's a lot, there's a lot I need to learn, because when we're looking at those pixels per inch, the question is, how does that really translate to, and also the backlit zones? What that combination of the two, how much does it really translate to equating to the high end HDR displays that are coming from Flanders, from Sony, and from Canon? That's the real question for me, because when you look at the price point of these monitors, while they are extremely expensive for the common person, in reality, if they can hold even up just most of the way to what the Flanders and the Canon and the Sonys are doing, then they're disrupting to a degree. So I'm
Absolutely.
not sure what that whole thing's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
So
enough
we
of
got
that.
that. We got it does 8K ProRes RAW, which I don't know of a camera that does ProRes RAW at 8K, so maybe that's a clue at what's to come.
Yeah.
We got to jump over and spend 8 minutes talking about Apple real quick.
Yes, we do.
Since we
Oh,
just talked about the Neon.
and by the way, speaking of Apple, there is on Canon Rumors. I'm not usually one to
Oh
person.
yeah, the
There is footage
C300.
of there's basically a C300 Mark II style camera that is 8K that they're using with Kira the robot, and apparently that is 8K ProRes RAW or something. There's a lot of stuff about. There's a
Okay.
lot of stuff happening right now. All right, let's go ahead. Sorry, you're taking over.
No.
Let's get to Apple World.
I'm glad you brought that up because I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
So we'll start with their panel because we're coming from panel land. It's
Yeah.
pretty much a monstrous. I mean, 1,000 nits sustained, up
Yep.
to 1,600 nits.
Yep.
Area. So it's a ridiculous panel. It's amazing. It's amazing. It looks weird. I'm not a fan of the whole new look. It looks like 2005 IKEA. All the stuff they announced to me, the chrome, the pattern, it's all wrong. They should have like something super clean, just vent lines and space gray. Done.
Yep.
Out of here.
Yep.
At any rate, the panel's wild. $4,000, another 1,000 for the stand, and another 1,000 or $500 for the matte finish. Thoughts on that? Anything before we move on to the Mac Pro?
Sure. I mean, I think that somebody said it somewhere that why didn't they just charge $6,000 for the whole thing?
Yes.
And then when you buy it, there's an option to remove the stand.
Yeah.
Nobody would bitch. It would be
Yep.
like, okay, that's the price that they came up with, but you're
Yep.
saying it's $1,000, and then that's just the way the internets work. You know that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we have the Mac Pro, the cheese grater, which, by the
Oh my
way,
God.
I just went to Apple's website. If you go to apple.com right now and
I'm
look
there.
at their, they got their little laptops and all their computers at the top
Yep.
in those little silhouettes.
Yeah.
God, Mac Pro legitimately is a cheese grater.
It actually comes with one
You
of those
see it
giant blocks
up
of
there?
Tillamook medium cheddar is what you get.
Amazing.
Giant
Someone's going to, and I saw people saying this a lot on Twitter, someone's actually going to take a block of cheese to this when it comes out.
100 million.
You know,
Well,
it's gonna happen.
especially because the chassis is removable. So
Yeah.
you can
Oh,
take
there you
that
go.
whole top hat and then you could just grate like a
Sanitize it,
giant,
just go nuts.
Parmesan Reggiano, like a
Just like your camera's autofocus is grating
It's amazing.
our faces,
Look, I'll
our
do
eyes.
it right now. Let's see if I can do it. Oh my God. I have to press
There
it.
it
Oh,
is.
there it is. There it is.
Ah!
Wait, it's like an effect. All right, here we go. Perfect.
It's amazing.
At least I'm little. Okay, perfect.
All right. So we got the
Uh,
iMac Pro. I think it's cheap. I think it's amazing how affordable they're making this thing. $6,000 gets you into a system
Yeah.
that is crazy advanced. And what you can do with this is absurd. I'm not going to buy one at all. Not
Neither
even
am I.
close.
Nope.
The only thing that tempts me is if the price goes down eventually, or buying a used one and then slapping normal human being graphics cards in it. Not that dual 65 million teraflops of whatever.
So, and then you're adding the Afterburner ProRes RAW accelerator card.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that the ProRes accelerator and just a off the shelf Vega or two.
Yeah.
And I'm done. But I mean, right now I'm working off a 27-inch, not the newest generation, the late 2017, I think it is. And it's beautiful. The only problem I've had with my entire setup, we've got two of them here, two edit bays. The only problem I've ever had is hard drive speed from RAID systems. So the machines themselves for 4K has been beautiful. Multiple streams of 4K, no problem. And I'm in Final Cut, so that's different than Premiere. But anyway, really impressive. Really impressive.
How do you feel about the whole still not making up with and having the NVIDIA situation?
It doesn't bother me because
you're in Final Cut.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even a consideration.
Right.
The only reason I think it would be nice is if I boot camped in to play games, which I do. And, Radeon stuff or AMD's fine for that, but NVIDIA would be kind of fun.
Yeah, the whole RTX thing. I mean, I keep playing with CineTracer more and more from Matt Workman. And he's doing some CineTracer stuff right now with RTX.
Right.
And some of the things that he can do now and is starting to do with lighting is pretty phenomenal. And that's probably where we're going to lose out. Though I did pose a question online, and we'll see where it all goes. It does actually, though, give me clarity. I've been waiting for quite some time to get a new MacBook Pro. And I think that with the Rev, we're sort of more than likely in the last iteration of the current design of the MacBook Pro, which is not a bad thing. I always say that it takes Apple like 3 to get it right.
Yeah.
And we're a few in. And I have, one of the early MacBook Pros with the touch bar, which is whatever. But the new 8-core and the fact that I can go to 32 gigs of RAM, and I can put that Vega higher end, not compared to a PC person, but that higher end Vega card.
Vega's respectable.
Yeah. I mean, I think it will be a big, what is going on here? Uh-oh. I don't know. Shiznuts is going crazy. I'm just going to ignore that right now. I don't know what's happening. I think it's time for me to, I know Rashad, he was quoted on the Apple site. I will say that I think it's time for me to move into that next system, and then this one will move down the line.
You stick with the laptop?
I have to. That's just my, the way that I work in general. I keep wanting to go to an iMac Pro or something like that, and it doesn't make sense for what I do for a living at this point. And the fact that I'm not sitting there cutting all day long.
Yeah. So, if they figure out cooling, you don't need to. Honestly, if Apple figures out cooling for their laptops, they're some of the most powerful. I mean, many of them are more powerful than my machine.
Yeah.
It's just it's just you'll never see the stats I'm getting on an iMac because you're got this compact, little coal.
God, David, I can't even read what he just said. That's crazy. Okay, so that's ridiculous.
Oh, geez.
Oh, I hope you're having water. H2O. No, come on.
Oh, man.
Right. Good. All right. So we have covered some ground. That new Mac Pro is going to be polarizing. It's going to give a lot of people what they were looking for, but they're not going to buy it anyway. We're not looking at a machine where they're joking around here. The expandability there. But go to Linus Tech. I think if you watch his latest video, I think he says it right. He doesn't sugarcoat things. And for somebody like him to be impressed overall, in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, with what they're doing, says a lot for
Yes, it really
what
does.
Apple has done here. There's going to be problems with this machine in certain configurations. The reality is, without question, if you are a Final Cut workflow person, then this is going to be a ridiculous system. But I think the fact that what they're doing here is giving people in that higher end 3D space and in other areas really what they're looking for. Because I think Caleb says it, is saying it right. For your average person who's not dealing, let's say, with 8K, multiple streams all the time, if you're doing UHD 4K in any respectable sort of normal data rates, 200 to, let's say, 500 to 600 megabits per second, then the newer iMac Pros and even the highest end MacBook Pro are going to give you what you need in order to do that. It's when we make that jump to 8K in terms of video, multiple streams, all that stuff. And then when we're dealing with 3D, higher end VR and all of that kind of stuff, that's really where we start to look at these machines. I think.
I was just going to say, like, this machine was not made for us. It really
No.
wasn't. It was made for the most advanced computing requirements of today.
Totally.
Like, look, watch Max Yuriev's videos. The iMac Pro is actually not a great machine necessarily for video editing.
Right.
With the newest iMac refresh and the new cards, like, you're done.
Yep.
Get an iMac. iMac is perfect for, I would say, probably up to 6K workflows. So totally on the same page with you there.
Beautiful. You know what I just heard?
What'd you hear?
The pitter patter of little feet above you. There they are. And here we are. It's 6 p.m.
6:01 p.m. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Cameron Flask, episode 30, the big 3-0 in the books. I want to thank you all for I want to thank you guys for joining us. Y'all have been wonderful, except for those who have not, and you know who you are.
That doesn't even make sense.
Dirty children.
Dirty children.
360 grad and shiznuts. You need to calm down. It was a blast hanging out with you guys. And Jem, sign us off.
All right, children. It was a pleasure as always. Thank you very much for coming to the show. Don't forget, if you are not subscribed to this channel, hit that subscription button, bell. The bell's really for notifications. You know how this whole YouTube thing works. I don't. And I appreciate that, David. I'm glad you guys watched the live show. It was a gem of a day. And 3 dongles down, we'll be back with Ben if he comes back from his motorcycle trip as a new man, maybe the same man. And Dan, it's been an honor. I'll give you guys a final cheers. Thank you very much. There is look at that. Amazing. And Caleb, love you, man. I'll see you next week.
Likewise.
All the best, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.